Yesterday night, we had two men put their lives on the line in Diego Lopes versus Gene Silva. These men went to war for 2 rounds, and it was absolutely entertaining. And we also had this little hug fest, boring, just jab now and then fight last night. It just shows you how different MMA and boxing is in the year 2025. It will never be a debate, by the way, what is the better sport. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Gene Silva getting fraud checked and really UFC Noche as a whole, because it was a decent little card we had. Before we get into all that good stuff though, make sure to subscribe, because we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, man. And yeah, man, let's talk about it. So obviously yesterday, the main thing that happened was Diego Lopes versus Gene Silva. Absolute fight of the year contender, man. Just an absolute scrap. It started off with Diego Lopes and Gene Silva on the feet. Not a lot was happening. Then Gene Silva did a stupid spinning back kick. Diego Lopes took the back and he absolutely put it on Gene Silva. We had never seen Gene Silva face any adversity really in his UFC career until this moment, and he was facing a lot of adversity. I'll tell you what, dude, this guy was getting his face smashed in with elbows. He was trying to scramble. He was trying to do anything he could, but Diego Lopes was just being relentless. Diego Lopes was not letting him get up. Eventually, somehow, Gene Silva just did a weird scramble. He got up. Diego Lopes was thinking about a little triangle, but he didn't really commit to it. Then it went back on the feet, man. The end of the round finished, but it was a clear domination, potentially a 10-8 for Diego Lopes. Then we went into the second round. The second round, obviously, it started on the feet. It was fairly even. Gene Silva landed big. Gene Silva landed big again. Gene Silva landed big again, and he rocked Lopes, man. And then we just saw Gene Silva go in there and put it on Diego Lopes for pretty much a round. We just saw Diego Lopes start the first round, putting it on Gene Silva. Then the second round, Gene Silva goes in there and just absolutely puts it on Diego Lopes, just smashing him, about to rock Diego Lopes. Dude, Diego Lopes has one of the best chins in the UFC. I don't understand. This man is a D1 blockhead. He just eats those shots like it's nothing, dude. This guy's Marvin Vettori 2.0. Diego Lopes, the blockhead you are. But Diego Lopes was eating these shots. He was actually kind of rocked for a moment, and then we saw Gene Silva towards the end of the round get a little bit cocky. He got cocky. He was rushing in, and then all of a sudden, Diego Lopes hits Gene Silva with a spinning elbow, the same spinning elbow that Gene Silva had been practically trying for the entire fight before that. He rocks Gene Silva, he knocks him down, leaves him face planting on the floor. Gene Silva has a huge cut opened up on his eye, wherever that cut was, but blood was gushing literally everywhere. Gene Silva was taking those shots, but then it looked like he was kind of beginning to recover. The referee stopped it. I'm not going to complain about the stoppage. When I originally watched it, I was actually really bummed out because I saw the fight we were getting, and I was just in love, man. I was just getting Revolve versus Van flashbacks. It was a complete war, and I wanted to see more. And there was only 12 seconds left on the clock. Obviously, the referee stopped it. I'm not mad about the stoppage. We've seen Gene Silva was very mad about the stoppage. He protested it, and he actually even kind of punched Diego Lopes in the back of the head. Let's see how mad Dana White's going to be up about that, man, because Dana White was just with his true love boxing in Vegas, I think, last night. But still, let's see how Dana White reacts to that. Eventually, these two men settled their beef. They shook hands, but still, great win for Diego Lopes. What's next for him? I think a potential matchup with Aljamain Sterling, potentially. Maybe a matchup with Yair Rodriguez. I don't think a title shot is there. Maybe Earl Murphy, he goes in there and he loses to Volk. Volk gives the belt up. It's vacant, and then we get Masvidal versus Diego Lopes 2 for the vacant belt. That would actually be a dream scenario, boys. But yeah, man, that is my reaction to the main event. The co-main event, David Martinez taking on Rob Font, brother. I didn't actually do any predictions for this card. I did predictions for myself, but I did not post them anywhere, and thank goodness I did not post my predictions anywhere, because this is one of the worst I have ever done on a UFC card. I'm not going to let you guys know my predictions because that was just straight embarrassing. I was on a bit of a hiatus. I didn't do any predictions for this card. I'm sorry about that, but still, the motivation's not there, man. Let's hit 1K, man. Help a brother out. Help a brother out to get me more motivated. But still, Gene Silva versus Diego Lopes is a scrap. In the co-main event, like I said, David Martinez actually getting the upset win. Who saw this coming, man? We just saw Gene Massimeno get all that hype for going to a split decision with Rob Font at UFC Tampa, I believe that was, or UFC Seattle, sorry. And then we see David Martinez take this fight on short notice. and just go in there and beat Ralph Font very clearly, able to rock Ralph Font, stun him in the 3rd round. Just an absolute good fight, and I'm very happy for David Martinez. We have a Mexican in the top 10 of the bantamweight division, only 2 fights into his UFC career. I have never been so happy. But in today's video, what we're really just going to be talking about for the majority of it is the fighting nerds. Are they still there? Do they still have it? That's the question that I'm going to be trying to answer in today's video, because it feels like the problem with the fighting nerds is every time they get there, they get to the top of the hill, they are 1 win away from fighting for the title, they crumble. You know, we'll start off with Gene Silva. Gene Silva went in there against Diego Lopez. This is probably a #1 contenders fight for Gene Silva. If Gene Silva won this, you better bet that they're going to give this man a title shot over Lerone Murphy, over Movsar Evloev, over really anyone else in the division. And that didn't happen for one reason, and that is because Gene Silva just got overzealous. He got overzealous, something we've seen a lot in his UFC career, but he's been able to do it. You know, you guys didn't notice that. I did, kinda. You know, I was kind of glazing Gene Silva. I was kind of on the hype train. But something I did notice was that he got overzealous a lot in his UFC career, and he was just too cocky. He was too stupid. He was just joke around in his fights. He would try to touch gloves with you every 5 seconds, and it worked. When you're facing bums, you know, I'm completely discrediting Gene Silva right now. I think Gene Silva is literally one of the best fighters in the world. But what I'm saying here is you can't just be stupid. You can't taunt. You can get into the heads of guys like Bryce Mitchell. You can get into the heads of guys like freaking Drew Dober, but you can't get into the head of someone like a blockhead like Diego Lopez, someone who's been around the game for a while. You know, although Diego Lopez may not have the UFC experience, he has the overall fight experience. This guy has like 35 career fights. You're not going to be able to get into Diego Lopez's head. You're not going to be able to just taunt him. You're not going to be able to laugh in his face. Diego Lopez is much more experienced than that. And I think that's just something that he's going to have to work on. That's something that he's just going to have to become better at. I think Gene Silva, he went out there today and he put on an absolute great performance, and he arguably was on his way to beating the pretty much #2 contender in the featherweight division. That's crazy. You know, this guy's literally last year he wasn't even in the UFC, or maybe 2 years ago he wasn't even in the UFC, and now he almost beat the #2 contender. I know I'm saying almost, but still, he almost beat the #2 ranked contender. If he was smart, he would have beat the #2 contender. And I seen this just as like 2 of the best contenders in the division facing each other, and it showed, man. Both of these guys are 2 of the best contenders in the division. I do expect Gene Silva to still get a step up in competition in his next fight, or maybe not a step up in competition, but you guys know what I mean, a step up rankings wise, because I think he is 10th. I think he'll maybe even go down because of this performance, but he shouldn't go down. Realistically, he should go up for having Diego Lopez rocked in a lot of moments. So maybe he'll be like 8th, and then I think we give him like, I don't even know who we give him, like a Brian Ortega. Oh, he would, bro, no, I don't want to see that fight, bro. He would slime out. He would absolutely slime out Brian Ortega. But for me, the narrative around Gene Silva is, sure, he's not the unstoppable, insane force that everyone thought he was, man. He's not literally gonna become the greatest UFC fighter of all time. But how I still think of Gene Silva, a future main eventer, future champion, 100%, probably, I think, top 3 featherweights in the world. I think this guy is still so good, and I arguably think that Gene Silva can beat Volk on his night. Like that, I still think I'm still so high on this guy. Don't get me wrong, this is a tough loss against someone, a very brutal loss, but I think he will be back. It's not like he got completely flatlined chin, dude. If anyone gets hit with that spinning elbow, they're going down. So I don't think it was necessarily anything to do with his chin, and I think his chin should be back on track. And I mean, if anything, he wasn't out cold. If Gene Silva went out cold, that would be something completely different. But he was able to eat a lot of shots from Diego Lopez, and he honestly got back up right away and protested the stoppage. So I don't think Gene Silva's chin is anything to worry about. Gene Silva is a future champion, 100%. I said that a while ago, and I still am believing that. But moving on to the next fighting nerd that we're going to be talking about, Carlos Prates. Obviously, all the fighting nerds have taken a loss this year. That's like the main theme of this video, is the fighting nerds Oregon. All the fighting nerds have taken a loss this year. That's like the big thing. Carlos Prates, his loss against Ian Gary, it's not something to write home about. It's not something insane. Obviously now, because he's coming off a win to Jeff Neal, a very crafty contender who's been around the welterweight rankings for a while. But Carlos Prates is still very good, and I think I can say that because, like I said, he is coming off that win. A win where he literally just showed that it was an off night against Ian Gary. It was simply an off night. He did not follow the game plan. He did not execute the game plan like he was supposed to. He looked just really bad in that Ian Gary fight, and even in a performance where he just looked really flat, he looked really stale, he was able to truly hurt Ian Gary, rock Ian Gary, knock down Ian Gary, have Ian Gary doing a Fortnite revival emote, just looking stupid in the 5th round. Carlos Prates is still one of the top contenders in the welterweight division, dude. He's gonna beat Leon Edwards, and he's gonna be in the top 5. CP is still good. This man is young Anderson Silva. He fights so similarly. The side kicks, the head movement, everything about this man is so good. And on another night, I think he beats Ian Gary. I'm still super high on him. I'm so high on Ian Gary, dude. But both of these guys are still very good. Carlos Prates, sure, this was a bad loss, but like I said, even in this loss, he showed moments where he looked good, where he looked like he could potentially be a future champion, you know, and that says a lot, dude. That says a lot for Carlos Prates. He was going against one of the best welterweights in the world in Ian Gary, someone who, mate, I took a fight on short notice against the boogeyman of the division in Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm a BMF, yeah, buddy. Okay, moving on to the next fighting nerd we have that took a loss this year, Mauricio Ruffy. Mauricio Ruffy, he's one of the only fighting nerds that didn't necessarily make it to the top, and if anything, he crumbled in a moment where he really needed him to actually succeed. He crumbled against like number 15th ranked Benoit Saint-Denis. I honestly thought he was probably, I was really high on Mauricio Ruffy, dude. I was honestly really high on Mauricio Ruffy. I wasn't like a lot of people saying he's the guy to beat Ilie Topuria, man. Yeah, he's gonna go in there, he's gonna spinning back kick Ilie Topuria in oblivion. No. But I thought this man could be a future staple of the top 5 in the lightweight division. And with a bad loss to Benoit Saint-Denis, it hurts. This one hurts, man, because unlike the other fighting nerds, he didn't necessarily lose to someone who is like one of the best in the division. He lost to someone who is one of the worst in the division, in Benoit Saint-Denis. And in this performance, we really just saw he has no ground game. He has literally zero to offer on the ground, just getting completely dominated by Benoit Saint-Denis. And don't get me wrong, Benoit Saint-Denis is crafty on the ground, but he's no Khabib. He's no Hamza Chimaev. And Benoit Saint-Denis was able to look like a Hamza Chimaev against Mauricio Ruffy. On the feet, Mauricio Ruffy is still, literally, this might be a hot take. On the feet, Mauricio Ruffy is top 5 in the lightweight division. He's so good on the feet. On the ground, though, this guy has a lot to work on, and I think even with a decent ground game, and even if he can just stop the takedowns a little bit better, which he was doing in a Benoit Saint-Denis, maybe I am still high on Mauricio Ruffy, man. Maybe I am. Maybe this guy could actually be something decent in the future. All he has to do is work on that takedown defense, and I think this guy could be genuinely a real problem in the lightweight division. His striking, literally, anytime he was on the feet with Benoit Saint-Denis, he was very close to ending the fight. Don't get me wrong, boys. But moving on to the next fighting nerds we have to talk about, Gael Barajo. He obviously took a loss last week, or 2 weeks ago now, to Imavov, and this was a pretty bad loss. You know, it was a pretty clear loss. I had it maybe like a 3-2 Imavov. I didn't have it as dominant as a lot of other people had it, like a 50-45 Imavov. Calm down, buddy. Slow your roll. I had it 48-47. And I think this was a really uneventful fight, man. I don't even really want to talk about this for too long, because unlike all the other fights that ended in a finish, that ended in where both fighting nerds had moments, this was just there, man. I'm going to remember this fight as just a boring fight. It was so uneventful. This is literally, this is boxing. This is literally a boxing fight. This is how Canelo Crawford felt last night, where there's some moments where, they were kind of going back and forth, and then for the rest of the fight, we just were bored, you know. And there was not a lot to it. It was just two good contenders, two counter strikers going in there and playing their game, sticking to the game plan. And Imavov was the better one, and I think Imavov is just the better one overall. Gael Barajo, I think he's honestly overrated. I think Gael Barajo, he might be, I don't know if I want to say the worst. He's up there for the worst fighting nerd. Yeah, and that might be a hot take, but I genuinely think he is up there for the worst fighting nerd. He had a decent showing against Imavov, but I still don't think he's that good. I think someone like Barajo loses to Izzy, he's not that good. However, I think he still had moments, and I think he could still be at the top. You know, I think this guy is more of a top 10 guy rather than a top 5 guy. That might upset some people, but I do think that is the truth. And yeah, man, that's what I feel about Gael Barajo. And in conclusion, what's next for the fighting nerds? How good are these guys? They're still really good. They are still really good. And I think a lot of people are gonna say that the fighting nerds are over. The fighting nerds are done. But like Icarus once said, to fall means you have once soared. These guys had a huge fall off this year. Some would say, I don't even think they really had a bad fall off, but they're only saying they had a bad fall off because of the incredible, like, a career defining, like, water bending year they had in the year of 2024, just coming out, making their debut, going crazy, knocking out literally everyone, fighting every 2 weeks of 2024. And I think we're going to see a comeback year in the year 2026. I think Carlos Prates, he's going to go in there, he's going to beat Leon Edwards, and then he's going to be in a number one contenders fight. I think Gene Silva, he's going to get a good step up in competition. His next fight still maybe an Aljamain Sterling, maybe a Brian Ortega. He's going to slime them out, and then he's going to be back in title contention. I think someone like Kyle Moralo, he's going to face someone like an Izzy, like a Strickland. Maybe he can pick up a win over them, and then he's going to be back in title contention. I think someone like a Mauricio Ruffy, he's going to go in there. He's going to have to pick up another win before we give him a shot in the rankings. Maybe, I think Mauricio Ruffy can get another fight in by the end of the year. I'm hopeful for that. So maybe Mauricio Ruffy gets a good win over an unranked bum, maybe like a Draker close-up by the end of the year. And then next year, he starts it on a good one. And then we're talking about this guy in the top 15, and he gets a good one over someone like Michael Chandler, like a Moicano. And then there we go, we're back. You know, he just has to work on that ground game. So in conclusion, the Fighting Nerds are still super good. They're still future champions. If their whole UFC career, none of the Fighting Nerds become champion, I'll delete my YouTube channel. Like, there's zero chance that does not happen. But yeah, man, stop hating on the Fighting Nerds. They're still really good, still some of the best contenders in the UFC. And yeah, man, I just wanted to drop my opinion because the Fighting Nerds are currently receiving a lot of hate, which I do not think is warranted. But yeah, man, that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to comment, and make sure to give me some video ideas because MMA Outpost is running low. But I'll see you guys in the next one. MMA Outpost out.